No.
There's the opening,
John, you're
the
a
opening
mug.
chimes.
You wasted your joke before the recording.
I told you I'm not just going to wait until we start recording because then it's too obvious. Like I would have, I was thinking of doing it like midway through the call, but I don't care about it being recorded. I'm just happy it's working.
To be fair, it would have worked.
Yes, please. Could you ask if
But just be happy, Pat, that not only did I get you with that, I also dabbed immediately afterwards.
Yeah, I noticed that, you dirty bastard.
This ginger apple juice is kind of nice.
Wait,
You can't
sounds
really
weird.
see it.
I can't do
but-
ginger.
Too much blur.
Yeah, ginger's a
Yeah.
very strong flavour.
Simply
Yeah, I can make this myself, though, to be honest. But it's nice to see it made.
Have you guys ever seen red ginger?
No.
You remember the
No.
Masato place that I took you to once, Rob?
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll remember, but they had those like red like strips on the plate, and I had no
Oh.
idea what they were.
The
Turned out
pickled
it
one.
was ginger. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like a palate cleanser.
Ugh, it does the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rob.
nice.
So why did
You
you
have that in
pick this film?
So I picked it for a few reasons, John. But I suppose
You're a horrible racist is one. Yeah.
Oh man, it's the opposite. But no, I really like Spike Lee is basically the most important one. And I really want to pick more Spike Lee films, but I think a problem with most of his films that I'd like to pick, sort of like Do the Right Thing and the Malcolm X biopic, like they're really good films, but they don't really follow a sort of traditional narrative. So I think it's quite easy to give up on them if you don't go into it knowing what to expect.
Was this your bridge gap?
Yeah, kind of. Like it was kind of my introduction to Spike Lee because it's one of his more accessible films. And I think if you go into another Spike Lee film with this in mind, then you kind of know what his style is enough to not give up on films like Do the Right Thing, I think. So it's kind of like my gateway into picking more Spike Lee films.
Gateway, that's the word I wanted. Sorry.
And yeah, I just think it's a really well made film, and like I think it handles everything really well. Like I think going into it, sort of knowing what the title is, you can't really hide what the what the theme of it is. But there's a really nice story with so the original director of it was Jordan Peele, and he stayed on as a producer. But there's a story where he phoned up Spike Lee, and he was like, "Oh, I've got this film for you. Like they want me to do it, but you're going to be the perfect person, so I'd really like you to do it." The premise is black man infiltrates Ku Klux Klan. And apparently Spike Lee just laughed and he was like, "Oh, so like the Dave Chappelle skit." And Jordan Peele was like, No, this is real. This actually happened. And I think Spike Lee did a really good job of kind of like recognizing the absurdity of that premise and sort of recognizing that you can draw humor from it. Yeah. But even though he drew a lot of humor from it, I think he also did a really good job of making a very serious film. So yeah, I think that's basically it for me. That's why I think it's such a good film, and yeah, I mean it's very relevant today, isn't it? So
yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Now, that is one of the reasons I really like the movie, is because it manages to blend like a serious, heavy topic with comedy, but like in the right way. Like there's never really comedy at the expense of black people. There's never like comedy in the way that you're supporting the Klan or anything. It's always like comedy with the police or like at the expense of the Klan and stuff like that, which I think is quite clever.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it balances a few other things really well as well. So, I mean, with it being a story that's set in the 70s, I think there would have been a danger that people who aren't sort of heavily involved on one side or the other, they could have looked at it and gone, "Oh man, things are really bad back then." But I think they did a good job of balancing it to say like, yeah, things were bad back then, but they still are. Like yeah, I think that was really well done as well. And then also as well, I think it's also really impactful because it does a really good job of balancing the good times with the bad. So like you get the whole thing with like Ron and Patrice's relationship and how that's sort of building, and yeah, I think without that then it would have just been a lot of doom and gloom. So yeah, I just think on a lot of levels it's a really well made film.
Yeah. Anyone else want to say anything? Because I don't want to just start going off on a tirade. All right,
and that's your in, John.
Go on. It's noisy where I am, so go on.
I was thinking I was like, oh, I'm a horrible person. Like, I grew up thinking, oh, I'm a terrible person. The things that I'm
Oh, the delay on that.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I think the story's like really good. As we were saying, like it does really well to blend like comedy and like serious sort of political stuff and showing. I think it's important to show the extremes of both sides because, like, yeah, obviously, like the big problem. I mean, always, but obviously we've been aware of it more recently. Specifically, is the whole, people are saying Black Lives Matter because it's a problem and they aren't being treated the same way as other people, and then all the white people are like, oh, but white lives matter too, or all lives matter. It's like, yeah, all lives do matter, but your ones aren't the ones that are like at risk right now. But I think this film does, like, obviously you've got those scenes where it literally cuts from people going white power and then cuts to people going black power, and it's like like, yeah, it's more important for black people to be empowered right now because they need to be able to reach the point where they are treated as equals. But at the same time, it's like, oh, can't, like, especially when they're doing the thing near the start saying like all the power to all the people. It's like, right, but that's what you're doing is going against that philosophy. And it's so hard because it's such a bristly subject. Like, it's hard to talk about, especially again, like we talked about with like feminism and stuff before. It's hard for us to talk about it because we're fucking white men. But apart from Emmanuel, obviously. But it is something I have a lot of opinions and like I feel very strongly about. So,
and the thing is as well, like it's sort of it's really interesting the way that it's set up so that kind of Ron basically infiltrates him off his own back. And see, this was one of the criticisms that I had about the film, but I think thinking about it, if they'd have gone too far this way, then the message would have been less about sort of the Ku Klux Klan being the bad guys and that kind of thing. So I don't think it's such a criticism. But one thing that I kind of picked up on is that I thought they could have done a little bit more to show how bad the police were as well.
yeah.
But I think it's kind of addressed because you've got sort of Ron infiltrating the KKK off his own back and then basically forcing them to let him sort of go on this mission or whatever you want to call it. And then also towards the end as well, I think the ending is so clever because you've got the whole thing where like they basically say, oh, we're cutting you, like you've done a good enough job, like you don't have to do this anymore, kind of thing. And then it goes into the end where Patrice and Ron are talking about Ron resigning from the police and Patrice being like, like I can't sleep with the enemy kind of thing. And then you've got the double dolly shot of them going down the hallway. I thought that was really clever because it's kind of like the problem hasn't gone away. It's just that the police have kind of, well, they've prematurely gone, yeah, you've done a good enough job. It's not a problem anymore. So the problem still exists because of them, basically. And that's kind of what's stopping her from having the luxury of being on a different side to Ron. Because yeah, like I mean the enemy is bigger than sort of what's between them. So yeah, she doesn't have the luxury of having that morality in that situation. So I thought that was really well done. And then going into the real footage of the riots that happened in, I think was it Gainesville?
2017. It was in Charlotte, I think.
Charlottesville,
yeah. But then, yeah, sort of having that double dolly shot where they're both on the same side, even though they've got opposing moralities, but they've got this bigger enemy because the police have sort of prematurely said, oh, it's done, we don't have to worry about it anymore. And then that going into the modern day, I thought that was also well done because it's kind of, it's not sort of hitting you over the head and saying like the police are terrible, but it is saying like their negligence is part of why this is still going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a very important thing. It's like, it's again, same with like sort of the sexism stuff and like abusers and things like that. Yes, the worst people are the perpetrators. Just because you either pretend it doesn't exist or you don't do anything or you only like provide like verbal support, like you're still doing negative things by not showing enough support and like helping enough, because it's like, yeah, negligence is a big problem with that kind of thing. The ending of the movie, like the first time I watched it, was very jarring for me. like the they open the door, then they start moving on the like conveyor belt, and I'm just like, what's going on? And then it cuts to the thing, and I was like, okay, like this is really hard for me because the message that they give at the end there is really fucking important and really powerful. So like I can't fault it for that, but it just feels weird. But when I watched it this time, I kind of got it a bit more, because it was like we'd gone through the whole movie and seen everything. Everything was being sort of tied off. Like they got rid of the shitty racist cop who'd like killed people and shit like that. And it was like, oh, everything's good, and then it went to shit again. But I think the really clever part about that scene is the fact that they're in his house, they're just having a chat. Like, okay, I think the reason it was really jarring for me at first is because there was no bullet point on their like situation. It just kind of tails off. But then when I watched it this time, I was like, oh no, this is actually really good, because they should be in the comfort of their own home and safe. But just because someone knocked at the door, they've both pulled guns out because they don't feel safe, and that tells you a lot there and then. Like,
yeah, I think that whole setup is so clever as well, because when me and Rachel went to watch it in the cinema, when they were doing that, like as you say, they were tying little bits off. In the back of my mind, I was kind of going like, oh, this feels a little bit cheap. Like I don't want everything to be sort of like tied up nicely. I don't feel like this should have an happy ending. But yeah, I think in hindsight, I should have trusted Spike Lee more, really, because like it's sort of it's absolutely not what he gave us.
No, and I think, like you say, if it had like a happy ending, while it might have made a better movie, that wasn't the entire point. What are you laughing
John.
at?
You just said that like Austin Powers.
Movie. Yeah, I realized as I said it. Yeah, like it might have made it a better movie to have like tied things up nicely and sort of focused more on their relationship or whatever. But the importance of what they actually did, I think, far outweighs that, which in turn does make it a better movie. Like, it's hard to say exactly how I mean it, but hopefully you get the point.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. You're right, man.
Shut up, Alec.
The bit where sort of Ron started infiltrating the KKK, that had me in stitches in the film. It's like it's just the reaction of Flip when he starts sort of putting down his own people, I guess.
That's something else that I think the film does really well. It's just Flip as a character, because yeah, like the whole thing of sort of like Flip, kind of like the scene where they talk about the racist cop and how he'd like killed people in the past and that kind of thing, and then Flip's like, oh yeah, like nobody's gonna go against him because we're family, kind of thing. And
then he's like, that sounds like another organization or another group of people, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then also as well later on, Ron saying, like, talking to him about being Jewish and being like, you've also got a stake in this. Like, the only difference between us is that you can hide your ethnicity. Like that was really well done as well, I thought.
Yeah, especially because like his reaction to it, he's like, I was never really brought up as Jewish, and I'd never really thought about it. I was just sort of just another white kid, but like now I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah. I thought that scene was so well done, man. And I also think as well, like, big credit to John David Washington and Adam Driver, because the way that they played off one another was just like,
oh yeah, so good.
It's so good that I forgot he was Kylo Ren, man.
Well, that's what I mean. Like I like, not to fucking sound like a hipster, but I've loved Adam Driver for a very long time. Like, I think he's a fantastic actor. I think he got typecast quite a lot in earlier years, where he was just like the sort of druggy friend, like in a lot of movies. But he always does such a fantastic job. And yeah, I think it's such a stellar review of his acting ability to have seen him as Kylo Ren since I last saw this movie, and still be like, no, I believe who he is. Like,
he's outstanding.
Like, even the fact that we're referring to him as Flip rather than Adam Driver, like that's
yeah.
What about
that
him
whole scene though was like, he's like, what? that sort of just got me. I was in a constant giggle for about 5 minutes.
I just love that. The first thing is he's like, oh yeah, I hate. Oh, I almost fucking said it. I just hate N-words. And then they're just like, what? And then I just love he puts the phone down. He's like, did I just hear you use your real name? And he's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. But that's one of the things I love about it, man. Like, I think, I just think it does such a good job of like, you're under no illusions of like,
Oh,
who
God.
bad.
Oh, no.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. We had two Alex for a second. I almost threw up.
Yeah,
One is
like,
bad enough.
that's one of the things that I think the film does so well, because like you're under no illusions of like who the bad guys are and like who's in the wrong. But there's also scenes like that where the film recognizes like if this was going on in real life, like this would actually be quite a funny situation to like see and be a part of. Like, yeah.
Oh man, like I can't tell you how fucking scary that just was. Like, I think because I've heard the word so many times watching this movie, and I just went to quote the movie, and like I almost said it, and then my heart was like, oh fuck, oh, you can't do that.
I'm glad.
Blame Tarantino.
Yeah, it's a very bad word.
Well, when Tarantino says it, at no point does it pop into my head as me almost saying it. But because this is such a thing where like you feel like it doesn't feel like a movie most of the time. Like it just feels real. I don't know, for some reason it was just in my head. I was like, oh, I'm just quoting it, and then my brain was like, no.
Don't say it.
That's something that me and Rachel were talking about actually. It's kind of like, how do you think the actors felt saying it so much in the film? Especially someone like Adam Driver, like when he was chasing off Ron Stallworth, like it's.
I feel like I definitely think it will depend from actor to actor, but I think most of the time they're probably able to, as long as, well, depends on their morals obviously, but as long as it's contextually like appropriate, I feel like they can just view it as a part of their acting. Like,
yeah, I
same as
kind
if
of
they was to call a woman a whore or something. Like, obviously not as bad, but you know, that's not something you would normally do.
Yeah, but I kind of said to her, I think if I was making a film with Spike Lee, you'd kind of trust him that the reason that you were saying it was for a good purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you were in a Tarantino movie and he told you to say the word, you'd be like, do I need to? Is that necessary?
Yeah, I think, like, with you guys, I was going to say the same thing. Like, the fact that Spike Lee was the director, I would, like, I think they'd be more comfortable thinking, okay, because of what he's done before, how he is, like, what he tends to do, it makes more sense because this is more commentary on what has happened and what still is happening.
Yeah, I'll say, like, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen any other Spike Lee movies. You guys know what I'm like. I don't really remember directors or anything like that. But like, not having any basis for excuse me, not having any basis for who he is.
What the fuck was that?
But not having any basis for who Spike Lee is and like what his directing style is or anything. I still watch this, and at no point do I feel like, even though it's a very large amount, like that the words used, at no point was I like, did they have to do this? I was just like, no, this. I feel like the movie, like, it feels weird to say this because like because we've spoken about Tarantino before, and it's like, well, why the fuck did you do that? I feel like this movie would be less powerful if they didn't use it as much, because that's what makes it so real. Because like that, I was going to say that's the shit that used to go on, but that's the shit that still fucking goes on.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think the difference between sort of the way it's used in this and the way that it's used in Pulp Fiction, like if you took it out of Pulp Fiction, there'd be no difference at all.
Yeah.
And like nobody makes reference to it. Nobody really acknowledges it. It's just that Quentin Tarantino says it, and that's that. Yeah. Whereas in this, it's kind of well, it does a couple of things. Like, it reinforces the KKK as like the nasty shitheads of the film, and then it also reinforces what a nasty word it is. So it's well,
that's the thing. It makes you realize how bad the word is, but it also draws a very thick line, being like, these are the bad guys, because every time they say that kind of word or anything similar to it, like kike, whatever else, you just immediately are like, oh yeah, no, they're the bad ones.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. Like, so like Shaun of the Dead's another example. Like, it's kind of just like dropped and then sort of played off for a laugh, and then it's gone. And the reason I don't like it in Shaun of the Dead is because it sort of normalizes it, and like you've got loads of people who watch that and then go like, oh well, it's just sort of something, it's just a word, like you can just say it kind of thing. Whereas in this, it's the exact opposite of that.
I'm glad I don't remember it in Shaun of the Dead, because I feel like that tars it a little bit.
It does for me.
Yeah, because I do think I mean, in fact, this exact point is referenced in the movie, but I do think it's very important how things are portrayed in media, because, like you say, it can make things seem okay to do or okay
Mm.
to say or just quote unquote normal when it shouldn't be. Like you say, whenever Tarantino uses it, it's one, like you say, it doesn't change anything about the movie. It's not for a purpose. Two, it's very frivolous and like there's no intent behind it other than that he wants to say the fucking word and lick women's feet. But yeah, like with a movie like this, it's very purposeful and powerful, and like there's every single use of it there's intent behind it, and there's a point to be made there.
Yeah, definitely. Brexit is a good topic of conversation.
Very good point.
But that's one of the reasons why it's come out at the right time, I think, because it's sort of 3 years old now, and sort of Trump isn't the president anymore, but sort of Boris Johnson still is the prime minister, and people are still voting for people who say the horrible things that he said in the past, and it's still a very polarized world.
While Trump might not be in power anymore, there's plenty of people fucking going around being like, Trump, Biden isn't my president. Like, a lot of fucking shit.
Yeah, and that's another. Sorry, man, go on.
I was going to say, I think that's a really kind of powerful moment, like in the film where he's going like, they wouldn't elect Duke to be a president. Like, he's an evil shithead, and he's just like, from a black guy, that's very naive of you to say. And it's like,
that's very fucking true.
Very powerful.
Because I'll be honest, oh, sorry, man, go on.
I was going to say, to be honest, that was the view of most educated people, a lot of educated people who weren't for Trump thought that.
We all thought the same. We were like, they won't be that stupid, surely. And then, lo and behold.
The amount of journalists and all sorts of stuff all over America, when they watched that and they saw that, everyone's jaws were just down like, what the... Because people knew that he had lots of support and all those people exist out there. But because it had been played down and pushed down so much.
Which was intentional. Let's keep that in mind. That was absolutely part of their
plan. The people with like educated and whatnot, they thinking, no one's gonna, that's dumb. Why would you?
Yeah, so outside of the realms of possibility in your brain, you're like, that nobody would be that stupid. And then you look at that we've had Trump and we've had fucking Boris for so long, and you're like, oh, man, how are people this stupid?
And that's the thing, like... Sorry, man, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, maybe because of Trump, I wasn't surprised at Boris. I think that was it.
But that's the thing, though. Like, so at Disney World or Disneyland, one of them, they've got like it's such a ridiculous title that it sounds made up, but they've got a hall of animatronic presidents, and it's basically just like it's like a robot show of all the past presidents. And if you look at the animatronic Trump, you can tell that it's Hillary Clinton's face. They've just put Trump.
Oh yeah. I remember you showing us that actually. Even they were just like, no, there's no way.
Yeah.
Oh man, even Disneyland. It was like, no, that's dumb.
Like I do think that's actually one of the only moments in the movie that I felt like it was a bit out of character, which was when, like, obviously Ron is a very educated person, and he has his identity as a black man, but also wants to stand up for what's right and help everyone, not just black people. But yeah, that moment where he's like, oh, people wouldn't be stupid enough to vote this evil shitbag in, and like Alex said, the guy's like, oh, for a black man, you're very naive. I felt like that seemed to me very out of character for Ron. But at the same time, when you think about how, like, they're set in the 70s, like, it's probably exactly how they all felt. So even with everything they have to deal with constantly from white people and the police and everything, like, they probably still would have been like, no, surely not.
Well, that's an interesting thing with Ron, because like, if you take like Patrice, for example, I don't think Patrice would have ever said that, because like she's like very much in that world of like fighting against the system, whereas Ron's kind of like one foot in. I think he trusts the system enough to be a part of it. So yeah, I think that makes sense for him to be on that kind of viewpoint.
Yeah, it probably does. Like, it's interesting to think about, really, because she's like very extreme on the black side, and then you've got the very extreme of the Ku Klux Klan on the white side. And then Ron, while obviously he is a black man trying to fight for black freedoms, he's kind of in the middle, because like he's he's trying to infiltrate from within, obviously, because that's what that fucking word means. But like you say, he still believes in the system and he wants to be part of it. So like it's kind of an interesting sort of dichotomy between the three groups, because obviously you've still got problems in the police, as we see, but he's trying to fight against that. Because in fact, that scene at the end with the fucking shithead cop, I remember when I first saw that scene, I was like, what the fuck? Why is Ron not doing anything? He's like all up in his girlfriend's face. What the fuck is? And then it gets to the bit, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, we're good. I was like, I was about to kick off.
That's another instance of something that has been, because like apparently like that didn't actually happen. That's just invented for the film. But like that's another thing that's like been added in, and it makes the film like benefits it, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's the thing. Like I was saying to Alec the other day, like I saw an interview with Spike Lee, and he was talking about sort of his approach to making the film, and sort of what he thought was, I suppose, important to change. And he was saying that, like, from his point of view, like there was two purposes to the film, and one was to tell Ron Stallworth's story, but the other purpose was also to kind of carry that message of kind of like, you know, sort of the parallels between what went on then and what's going on now. And yeah, I think that scene really adds to it, because it's like I was saying earlier, it sort of doesn't hit you over the head with how shit the police are, but it sort of adds to that narrative of them being negligent enough to mean that the problem's still going on.
Yeah, because like you've got this guy who literally is saying, I could shoot your black ass, saying this to a fellow police officer, bearing in mind, I could shoot your black ass and nothing would be done about it. And that's one person, but same with all the fucking atrocities we hear about, like everywhere. For every one that you hear about, there's another 100 you don't. So like, I think that is very telling.
I do like that little opening thing where he's doing the interview, and they're kind of like, could you keep your cool if you were called an N-word? And then like, he's like, would that happen? And the other guy's like shit.
Just like, oh man, no, we can't do this.
I think that's something else about it. It's I think it's really good at depicting the seriousness of it while also keep like balancing it with like the humor, and that like it's a really dry sort of humor. You know, even when he's like gone on the phone and he's like, so you've made contact with the Ku Klux Klan, and he's like, they want me to be a member. And he's like, you probably shouldn't go to that meeting. And he's like, very good, sir. It's just like,
although one thing,
there's like a nice dry humor to it, which I think is good.
Do we know who that black dude was at the start?
What, the guy who was like kind of interviewing him?
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Because like he obviously can't have been part of the police, because he very specifically says to Ron, "You'll be the first black police officer," and like that makes me wonder who he is to be involved in that decision.
Yeah, well, if it's anything like over here, I know that there's sort of like directors and stuff in the council that I work with, and they interview new police officers.
Yeah, he was saying, from what I got from it, he was involved in, like you said, the council and the government, so he was close to the mayor.
Yeah, because I noticed he mentioned the mayor, so I thought, yeah, like what Rob was saying, I assumed it was probably a council-related thing.
Yeah, because they would encourage minorities to apply. Obviously, the sign was saying outside, and the council was part of that whole drive. So that's why they were trying to look for the first Jackie Robinson to really do this, because they knew that this person had to be tough and be able to like deal with what was going to come their way.
Yeah. I do think, like Alex said, though, I do think that's such a fucking excellent scene. It's just like she, because I think it is important. Like you say, I think there's 3 points to the movie, which is like telling the story, yes, keeping the message from like past to present day, but also making it entertaining as well. Because like while you know there is a certain section of people who will watch this seriously, like if they hadn't put any humor in it and be like, okay, yeah, this is really informative and like this makes sense. But I think it's important, like it would have reached a much wider audience with the addition of like the entertainment factor of it. And while it's not necessarily like crucial, I do think it was a good idea, because hopefully a lot of people saw this and not a lot of people then had to think about a lot of things afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that it's Yeah, sort of as well as kind of, you have to recognize how absurd the premise is, and then the humor comes from that absurdity. I think also as well, like equally as important, if you're making people laugh, they're more likely to come with you.
Yeah, exactly. Because like it's the same as like to vegans, for example. Everyone shits on vegans because of all the vegans and feminists, because of all the vocal minorities. People get to the point where they're like, oh, I don't want to hear this shit anymore, basically. And I feel like if you have a movie like this and it's just talking about how bad the KKK are and how downtrodden black people are, if you're not on that side already, I feel like a lot of people would switch off, which is unfortunate, but that's just how people work, isn't it?
My girlfriend heard that
What?
about vegans.
I mean, as I said, it's a vocal minority.
Yeah.
I could eat a horse.
but not any of the sinew bits or the gristle or near the bones.
Just cut all them little bits out, innit?
They're not bloody.
No, but like realistically, because I don't like. I'm sure you're just joking, Dan, but I don't actually want your girlfriend to think that I am shitting on vegans in general. Like I am literally just saying like the vocal minority for the people who actually do it for like legitimate reasons. Like because you've got the people who are, again, like I said, same with like militant feminists who aren't actually there for feminism. They're there just to create problems. Like they're.
She doesn't care.
Oh, that's fine then, isn't it?
I think if she really cared, John, she probably wouldn't be going out with me.
Well, no, I wonder. There's a difference between dating someone who eats meat and then thinking someone is shitting on their beliefs. Like, I've never met her, so I don't want her to think that I'm shitting on what she believes in.
No.
Seriously, I hate vegans.
Yeah, but Alex, you hate everything.
Yeah, Corey hates you.
I understand.
Nice.
That's some good self-awareness there.
So what I liked about the film was that balance of the it's hate on both sides.
Yeah.
It's not just white people hating black people, it's also black people hating white people.
Yeah.
And it's just associating people like bigotry and stuff. And I really like the fact that the main black dude he's like reasoning with the woman saying like, but I'm a cop and I'm black and do you hate me? And she's like, but I just don't want you to be a cop. And it's like, but there's a point. It's like he wants to do good and he's not. Yeah, he's kind of breaking the boundaries.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like it's still a thing, obviously, but particularly back then, you had to make decisions around that kind of stuff, and you had to literally split the line and be like, I can either carry on with what I believe in and fight this fight, or I can, be with this person or be part of this group. And unfortunately, a lot of people had to make those choices and be like, I have to segregate myself from these people I care about because I need to keep fighting for what I believe in. And like that's basically both of them. She can't be with him because she believes that the police are constantly against them, and he can't quit because he believes he can make a difference within the system. So like it just doesn't work, unfortunately, which is really sad because they clearly care about each other. But there are, as I think she said, or maybe it was Rob that said it when talking about her, it's bigger than them. Like, so they have to make those choices.
Yeah, and it's so true. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my point, but it is that kind of hard between a rock and a hard place where you need both. You need people outside spreading awareness and doing the kind of stuff that she and her group are doing, but you also need people who are in the system rising to places of power to make a positive change, because without both, you don't get to the place you need to get to.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's especially for any
minority,
any cops of like any ethnicity other than white. Like, yeah, they have a hard time. They have a rough time,
Yeah.
and they tread this line where they get hated on by people on both sides.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part about it for them, is that they don't get respect from their people or from their co-workers.
Yeah, so even though they have the people that support them on both sides, they also have the people that hate on them from both sides.
Yeah.
And even though it sucks, you still need those people who are brave, who are kind of brave enough and willing enough to do that, regardless of what they face and what they get.
I mean, yeah, it's
the bigger picture.
Because, like you say, if you only have one or the other, they'll get shut down. Like you need it from both sides, and it is just really like. I think a good example of a discussion here for it is like, do you remember the riots that happened after, I can't remember the guy's name, but after the black dude got killed? Like, say again?
George Floyd?
Yeah, that one. Remember the riots after that and how serious the riots got, and that there was fires and shit like that. And there was people being like, oh, like, it doesn't matter what's happened. You shouldn't be burning things and stuff like that. And at first I was like, yeah, I mean, that's generally how I feel about anything. No matter what's happening, you shouldn't get to the point where you're possibly hurting other people. But then I was kind of like, but no, because as bad as it is, they won't get listened to if they don't make enough of a fuss. And that's the sad thing, because and this is why if you only have on the outside and not the inside as well, they will just get shut down, possibly killed, because that violence will then be used against them. But like, it's the same as like rebellions and stuff. You have to be loud enough to be noticed, otherwise people won't pay you any attention and they'll think everything's fine. But there's such a fine line. There's such a fine line between like fighting for your beliefs and then like you go past a certain point and then they can fight back at you, and then it's a problem.
I think that's the thing, though, isn't it? Because with all that going on, it was sort of like you're already past the point where they're fighting back. So it's kind of like you're almost sort of like catching up to what they're already doing to you. And I think that's something that was really interesting with the film, because with that double dolly shot at the end, where you've got kind of like the world moving around Ron and Patrice, and sort of just sort of almost being like a visual representation of like the situation they're in, where Patrice is like, you're on the wrong side because you're part of the system that's doing all of this shit stuff, and then Ron's like, yeah, but you can't change anything without being part of that system, and then those two beliefs colliding, and then just have them both sort of like moving with the world kind of like going on around them, sort of being forced to be on the same side despite kind of like what their beliefs on how to achieve their end goal is. I thought that was really clever, because it's kind of it's that old thing, isn't it? It's sort of like in Do the Right Thing, for example, the ending shows a quote from Malcolm X and a quote from Martin Luther King. And the quote from Malcolm X basically says, like, it's the classic kind of like, by any means necessary. If you need to be violent kind of thing. And then the quote from Martin Luther King is, it's basically the opposite of that. It's basically saying like the only way that you achieve anything is by getting everyone on the same side. And it's the same thing in this. Like, you've got those two battling ideologies, but one can't exist without the other.
And it is really fucking hard, because I agree with both ideologies to an extent. Like, obviously I much prefer the idea of being able to be non-violent and just to have everyone get along, but that's not realistic, unfortunately. It's so hard, because like in an ideal world we'd all fucking love each other and there wouldn't be any racism or sexism or any fucking problems like that.
Or vegans.
Yeah, vegans, fuck them. No, but like it's so hard, because like, again, you don't want extremes on either side to the point that they were like in this movie, for example. Like, because again, that's the point. You've got Patrice and that group who are to the point where they're basically planning to arm themselves in case they have cops coming after them. Not even arming themselves against white people who might be attacking them, just specifically against the cops is what they're talking about. And okay, yes, especially even now these days, the cops particularly in America, are a big fucking problem. But it's like that's so extreme. And then again, you've got both sides saying the same thing basically, which is the black side saying, the white people are keeping us down, they're killing us, they're making us less than them, etc., etc. And then you've got the white side who are literally saying that they're superior, but also being like, oh, the black people are taking our country away from us. So like they both believe the same thing. One of them is fucking wrong, just to point out. Like the white people are wrong, but they both have those same beliefs. And it's like
So I like how you
combative.
clarified that.
Well, I realized
One
I
side is wrong.
said it, and I was like, I should probably.
It's the white people.
This is being recorded. I don't want this used against me.
But
I almost said the M word earlier. We can't have that.
that's another thing though with that Malcolm X quote, the by any means necessary one. Like it always gets misrepresented, like always. Like if you look at like memes and stuff, like you'll always see like a picture of Malcolm X with a shooter and it will say by any means necessary. But like he wasn't saying go out and shoot people. He was saying like if the ballot box works, then join me at the ballot box. But the ballot box doesn't work, so we'll try something else. Like it's
It's all about context, isn't it?
I really like.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was sad. I was trying to figure out what the significance of the double dolly was, but yeah, I think that's like a really interesting.
Yeah, I didn't really catch that either.
I
thought it was just a stylistic choice, but yeah, as soon as Rob said it was like to show them working together despite their sort of split beliefs, and it works really well.
I thought that was really cool as well when the Black Panther is given. Sorry, as in not T'Challa, but like
we know what you mean. Don't worry.
The Black Panther's given like a speech, and you just see all like individual shots of like just randoms, just like kind of, and it's like it's like very clearly sort of like touching them.
Bohemian Rhapsody, yeah.
Yeah. But it's like I just thought it was like a really really nice shot, and it was just it was like you don't necessarily have like the time to go into why it's kind of affecting them in this way, but like it's just like a nice little sort of shot of just the significance of them. I thought that was very nice.
Yeah, it's great. Like I think the way they do it, you don't even need the time, because they just showing them, like, even though none of them are like mega emotive or anything, there's enough there that you're just like, no, I get this.
Yeah. And something that I think is really cool about that as well is it shows you the kind of progression in the way that Ron's thinking as well. Because at the start, it's like you said, when he's in that interview and they're asking how he's going to cope with certain things, and he's saying, oh, do you think that's going to happen? Like it kind of like the subtext of that is that he's lived quite a sheltered life and he hasn't perhaps experienced the things that other people have. But then when he's in that room. Then when he's in that room and he's kind of taking it in, and then sort of going up to Kwame afterwards and saying like, do you actually think this is going to happen? Yeah, I think that's a really nice progression in sort of him becoming sort of like a different mindset.
Well, sorry, John.
Go on. No, go on. I've talked a lot.
I was going to say, like, it's just sort of it's kind of nicely shot as well, like just like from the beginning, and it's sort of like just the what's the fucking word I'm looking for? The looking up shot at like kind of the institution. That's it. The institution, but then it reverses back down on him, and he's going like, okay, and he's like sorting his afro out, and it was like that. That's just really nice, like just sort of on a visual level. But yeah, he comes in like he's just. I like how kind of naive he's presented like to be, and then just gets kind of just realizes like how complicated it's all gonna get, and I think it's really nice that they tie that into Flip's kind of character as well, because he's like so like well, Ron's really like going for it, and he's going like, Flip, like what's the deal? Why are you kind of half-assing this? And I kind of like, without putting a ribbon on it, like they kind of make the point that Flip can kind of hide his heritage, Ron can't.
Yeah,
and that's why Flip's a bit hesitant to get into it, and it's like, yeah, that's really nice, like kind of just character work there, like that kind of feeds into why he's kind of negligent in his own institution.
No, he just wants. He's like, I don't even know if it's all intentional or if it's subconscious, but he's just towing the line, isn't he? But
Yeah.
because he can, like, again, whether it's intentional or not, it doesn't actually really matter that much for the character. Although I personally believe that it's mostly unintentional. It's just not something he's thought of. Like he clearly just grew up in a world that, you know, he ended up being the way he is just naturally because, again, his skin isn't black, so he doesn't have to deal with as much of it.
And I think it's important to kind of establish that as well, because it's not like it's not a conscious thing, and that's how easy it is just to kind of let it fester. Like I think that's a really important aspect.
Yeah, it's oh, sorry, man. Go.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you said what you did, Rob, because I never really thought about the idea that he'd been a bit sheltered. Like, obviously, there's that moment later on where he's telling the story about playing with a black kid when he was younger, and like that's obviously him telling the story of him being that black kid. So obviously, he's dealt with plenty of it, but you know, of course, he did. It's the 70s, it's black. But yeah, you saying that because when I saw that interview part when he's like, how would you react to someone calling you the M word, and then he's like, is that likely to happen? I always took that as a confrontational thing. I always took it to be like, well, why, like, is that going to happen? Like as more of a, rather than it being like, really, would that happen? More of like a, that's not going to happen, is it? Because that will be a problem. But now that you've said that, that makes a lot more sense, and then also leans into the naivety of him when he's saying about people wouldn't be so stupid as to elect such a vicious person. So like that really does change things.
Yeah.
Also, to add to all that, like the fact that he said he went to college.
Yeah, which it probably would have been a real privilege at that time.
Yeah, that would have been a huge thing. There was a lot of just Americans in general who might not have, or who were starting to, before a black guy at the time, to be going to college among these people. He would have been in a true minority. That was not common. It was not normal. You got a job straight out of school, or work here, work there. You did not go to college. So he might have also been around a lot of other people who mainly just cared about how smart you were.
Yeah.
And the results you brought, not about what skin color you were, like depending on what degree it is. So it's like, it depends who he might have been around a lot of people who didn't.
Well, I guess it's like if you look at schooling even in this day, it's like you're around a lot of fucking idiots in like mandatory school, but then once you start getting to like college and beyond, that's when people have chosen to be there. So it's like you start meeting more like-minded people, or just generally not. I don't want to say sensible because there are still some fucking idiots who go to university. Like let's not kid ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
But like, but yeah, like you were saying, I feel like that could be a thing for him. Like he went to college and was probably just around people who just didn't really care about that kind of stuff because they were just trying to get their education and their career and stuff. And yeah, like it's quite a, like, obviously I love this movie regardless, but it's kind of giving me a new view on it now. Just picturing it as like this, the first, like when I watched it both times, it was a thing of like this guy just trying to fight against the oppression from within, which it is. But now thinking about it, it's also like a massive learning experience for him, like because he's learning about it from both sides. Like he's seeing the from the black rallies. He's like seeing how much, because again, like we say, although he will have dealt with stuff, he clearly was quite sheltered, so he wouldn't have dealt with nearly as much as some of these people, especially the women, because unfortunately, being black and a woman means you have to deal with a lot more than just being black. But the hearing these things and like knowing what they would have had to go through, I imagine that affected him instantly. And then, like, I have to wonder if that's what pushed him forward to want to do what he did, like, because he obviously wanted to make a difference from the inside anyway. And like he said, he always wanted to be a cop. So there's not necessarily the reason that he wanted to be a cop was to change things. He probably just wanted to be a cop in general. But yeah, seeing that kind of thing, I think, like now that I think about it, clearly sort of it made sure that he went forward with what happened. which I think is really interesting. Like, because I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective before.
Yeah, I think it's so cleverly written, man. Like, there's so much character work, and I think another thing that it does really cleverly is it connects that time to this time. I mean, obviously at the end you've got sort of the 2017 stuff and like that sort of hits you like a train, but like there's lots of like subtle stuff before that, like with David Duke saying that he's going to run for president and make America great again. Like, it's there's lots of little bits just like peppered in.
Apparently, David Duke took objection to his. He was like, "You make me look like an idiot." And it's like,
I mean, no, I think it was. Judging from that little clip at the end, because I know nothing about him other than that, I feel like it was fairly accurate.
Do you know, apparently when they were filming it, like Topher Grace found it so difficult to film, and obviously you would, right? Because not only have you got to play the head of the KKK, you've also got to play him as like quite a charming guy. So you can see why he would have found it difficult. But apparently he found it so difficult to film that in his spare time he made a supercut of all 3 Hobbit films just to like get out of that headspace.
Like it shows how much of a fantastic actor he is, that he was able to pull off being like the sort of smarmy racist scumbag, but also charming, but also an idiot. Like, and he did that so well.
Yeah, it's that old saying, isn't it? It's like a lot of people said it when the whole thing about Jimmy Savile came out, because everyone was like, "Oh, I can't believe it was Jimmy Savile. He's such a nice guy." And like the phrase that you heard a lot about that is that monsters don't get close to children, and it's the same with the KKK. Like, they win people over by being charming.
Yeah. It's what you need. Like, unfortunately, it's what you need in like any kind of movement. Is more important than the actual beliefs or promises is just someone who can get you on board.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. Because if you look at like Trump's supporters, they're all poor white people, and he doesn't give a shit about poor people. He only cares about billionaires. But he managed to convince them that he was the person that was going to be on their side. Like, they didn't buy into anything other than his charisma. If he wasn't a charismatic person, he wouldn't have been the president.
It's the same with Boris. Like, he's not charismatic as such, but
he also can't use an umbrella.
He plays the lovable idiot, and as we know from that footage that was leaked from their like private meetings, I mean, we kind of figured it anyway, but it absolutely is a character that he plays, like the lovable idiot, and it fucking works, and I hate that it works. Sorry, Emmanuel, were you trying to say something?
I was just gonna say, when you talked about the charismatic kind of thing, I forgot his name now. The one who's the leader of the kind of that branch of the KKK.
Oh, Walter.
Yeah, who I do like him as an actor. He also plays in Blacklist. He's a good actor. But he also says something similar, that the leader of the president of that kind of branch needs to be someone who's articulate, who can get people like on their side. And he doesn't want Felix. He's too much of
he would scare people away.
Yeah, he's that really kind of, I forgot what you call
hillbilly.
Extreme. No, extreme. He's more of an extremist.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's like, no, that's not going to help anyone. That's why he goes to Felix. But I kind of, not Felix, to Ron. But I find it funny because it was like I don't know. I just found it funny that around the whole kind of branch, he went to him because he found him the most approachable.
Yeah, and he was there for 5 minutes because everyone else is a fucking dumbass shithead.
That's the thing. If you had the fat guy or like the psychopath guy, you just hemorrhage members because they're fucking.
That's pretty much what he says, isn't it? That's
I mean, or like that, or you'd get all the wrong kind of members, and things would go bad. I mean, look, you just had fucking 2 of them, 3, I guess, technically, and they killed themselves.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing about the film, really, is like you have to remember that at the time, David Duke was the leader of the KKK, and he was like trying to legitimize it and become president off the back of that. So it's,
Imagine if that had worked.
Yeah.
You were going to say something a minute ago. But I think Pat, I think his mic kind of made him quite quiet.
No.
No, I think no. He just said it shows how stupid society is.
Oh, yes, it does. Yeah.
In the
But
society.
yeah, it is fucking like it's scary how important charisma is. Like, I mean, for example, look at Churchill. The whole thing with the metal rods that he put in his cigars just to intimidate people, because unfortunately it is such a big part of communication, and it makes a big fucking difference. If someone can talk well, they have like a good sort of stature and an imposing manner, like they get more attention.
Well, that's a really good example, actually, Churchill, because like even today, people say stupid things like, "Oh, Churchill won the war on his rhetoric alone," and all that bollocks.
And no, he fucking didn't. He did jack shit.
and that's what's interesting about it, is that the soldiers who were out of the country who weren't listening to his speeches, as soon as they got home, they voted him out.
Yeah, because they were like, "Oh no."
They're like, hang on a minute, this guy banned fishing in India. Fuck him.
Yeah. But again, there are people who just don't know that, like to this day, and they believe that he is a massive boon to our history and was like life-changing for the country. And then you've got people like Boris saying that it's, even though I'm sure Boris actually knows the truth, him saying that that's his role model. And it fucking works, and it infuriates me.
You know nothing, John.
Yeah. Oh, Alec, you
Yeah.
did miss something good though. Oh, sorry, Dan. Were you actually going to say something?
Oh shit.
Oh no,
No.
don't worry.
No, he wasn't.
No. If you were actually going to say something, go on. I was going to change the subject. No, all right.
I wasn't.
Ball bags.
Yeah,
They ball bags.
I think the thing about like the whole, like with this film, is I find that with people trying to like, is it the cancel culture, where they basically don't want people to learn that these bad things happen. Well, if you don't learn these bad things happen,
Then you can't change.
You can't change your perception of how things are.
Yeah.
Your future's gonna look bleak because you have nothing to learn.
And it's really detrimental not to learn about, say, slavery or the racism in like America.
Well, that's why, like, I think it's bad for us as well. Not as bad, but if you look at the history they teach in American schools, it's only about America. They don't teach you about all the fucking awful shit that's happened, because they know that if they inform people about that stuff, they'll be like, "Well, hang on, that shouldn't happen," and actually try and make a difference. And they don't want that.
As well, they what do you call it? They kind of make it seem less brutal than it was when it's the same thing that you watched, Daniel, Achievement Hunters. One of the guys there went to a museum tour, and there was two different guides. There was a white guide and a black guide, and he was told he wanted to go with the black guide, and they were the only white people there, and he was told, "Look, I hope you know that we're not gonna, be nasty to you or anything, but if you don't want to know the actual truth, go with the white guide, because they're gonna wash over all the brutal shit that happened." And he went with them, and they basically said, "Oh, they will tell you that, oh, we every Sunday, oh, there was this big like party, and like, oh, on the Sunday all the black workers got to be off, and they were allowed to like just basically be like everyone else," when in actual fact they weren't allowed to work that day. They would starve. They had no food. They weren't paid on that day. They literally was not. It wasn't like this whole, "Oh yeah, we're there. They don't have to work this day. They can, be free and all this." It wasn't. It was just basically, "Okay, you don't work this day. You're gonna starve today, because we're all a bunch of righteous pieces of shit." But the other guide was gonna say like, "Oh, it was lovely because like the slave owners would be like, oh yeah, you can be like one of us today, when in actual fact, no, it wasn't. It was absolutely awful and brutal.
I like how you read all that off while asleep.
Yeah.
No, it's true though.
Impressive.
Like it's the classic line, isn't it? The history's written by the winners, and most people don't want to know the truth. They want to have the whitewashed history because they want to just carry on and live in their little world and not know about the atrocities that happened because it's too jarring for them, and they don't want to know about it. It's really sad.
And I can attest to that in American schools. It was very much like you said, they would teach you the whitewash version of it, the just kind of pretty up version of it. But then after that, I would go home to ask my parents or like talk with my grandparents and my family about like what really happened. I would look into it myself. And one thing I did in uni, because part of my heritage comes from the African American, but also the Native American Indians. So two groups who were just like crapped on, but that's a whole nother thing. And I think after uni, like certain westerns that depicted Native Indians being the kind of bad guys and stuff,
Yeah,
pissed me off even more because when I looked into all the brutal truths of like what really happened and how bad it really was, which is part of my final project I had done, it rubbed me up even more so, and I was just like, how could you depict these people? You've done X, Y, and Z to them. You've driven them to the point where they literally have to either fight or starve to death. But long story short, and I'm just like, yeah, you're kind of making these films at their expense. And I was just like, but it's
like the movie in this movie, isn't it? Where they're making out like the black people are the enemies, like they're just out to rape all the white pure women, like the I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy at the start when he's doing that speech, and he's basically just saying like, "Oh, they're after our virgin pure white women," and it's like, no, they're not.
That's Alec Baldwin.
That's it. But yeah, it's unfortunately so true because people, again, they don't want to hear this shit, and like you said, it's such an affront. It's so disgusting when you think about what they did to these races or these cultures, and then they have the absolute gall to depict them as the bad guys because they know that it's what the white audience wants, and it's just sad.
You know, the film in it is Birth of a Nation, and that's a legitimate film.
Yeah.
It's like it came out in like 1915, and it was like a huge hit, and it was credited with restarting the KKK.
Yeah, I know, it's fucking crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the film. It's a nice film.
Yeah, it's a good film.
Not, I mean, BlacKkKlansman, not Birth of a Nation.
Oh man, what a reveal that'd be.
See, this is another interesting thing, to be honest. This is another interesting thing. So, like, if you look at some reviews of Birth of a Nation, because I watched it myself, like, out of curiosity, and like, yeah, I looked at like some writing around it, and a lot of the reviews will say things like, "Oh, the worst thing about it is how good it is," but I don't understand how you can separate. Yeah, I don't understand how you can separate something like it as a film from your ideology.
You can't, like, that's not a thing that you can do that with. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at doing that in general with things, but that is not something you can do that with. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean, it's literally propaganda. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
that's the point. No, that's no sad.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like this is the kind of topic we could talk about for fucking hours because like it's still such a huge problem, and it does need to be addressed. Like, yeah, things have gotten excuse me.
Yeah,
things have gotten better over the years, but like they're nowhere near where they need to be, and hopefully we do get there, but it needs to happen sooner than later, because like there's still people dying, there's still people suffering. There's like, again, like was portrayed in this at the end, where they're pulling out guns just because the door's knocking. There are still people in parts of God damn it, Dan. There's still people in like very civilized parts of the world that fear for their life every day. Like, and that nobody should live like that. Like, that's fucking mental. Like, I mean, have you guys ever heard of the 5 freedoms for animals?
No.
So it's a legal thing. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it's basically like the things that you're expected to provide for an animal is like, you know, food and water, the ability to act normally, like space, exercise, stuff like that. And the kind of things that are listed there, I'm like, there are people in the world that don't get even one of these things. Like, how are we letting this happen?
Yeah, I think that's really the salient point of it all, isn't it? Like, I think it's a film that could have quite easily just have become a period piece for the 70s, but because everything that is commenting on is still relevant now. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that it does really well, is it sort of goes, this was racism in the 70s, but don't be too comfortable because it hasn't really changed much.
And I think it's kind of it's good at sort of portraying that sort of futility of it, because like Ron can go around and call people racist assholes and get them arrested and that, but
won't solve anything.
Yeah, it's still, he might enjoy it in the moment, but it didn't really amount to anything.
Well, it's like necessarily, isn't it? That would be solving the symptoms, not the cause. Like, just because you're getting rid of the things that you're visibly seeing, it doesn't solve the problem. Like, you need to get to the source and work from there.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's like always going to stick with me with this film is when me and Rachel first went to see it, I basically tried to go in as blind as possible, because like, I mean, it being a Spike Lee film, like I was always going to watch it anyway, and then sort of having a title like it's got, it sort of, like I said earlier, you can't really hide the theme, and then that's already something that sort of, you know, you're interested in, kind of thing. So yeah, I tried to see it as blind as possible. I didn't really know much about it, and then just the last image of the film of the American flag, black and white, upside down, just seeing that in a cinema full of people who have just seen kind of like the bits that have gone before it, like, it was such a weird feeling. I don't think I'll ever forget that.
Yeah, it's
Oh, I'm listening.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
That's good. I thought he was dead.
No, I'm just laying here listening.
No, I know, Pat. I just like, you won't have seen it, Pat. But I was doing this while I was talking. I was doing that, like, and then just went silent for a sec because I was feeling like again.
You sleep like you're in a coffin.
Yeah, I was going to say he's like, oh.
He's a vampire.
I don't sleep like this. This is just me.
The Undertaker.
I don't sleep like this. This is just me.
I don't sleep like this.
I'm gonna go now.
All right, man.
No, dude.
Bye.
It was really fun looking up your nose and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Dan, I wanted to thank you for something. I don't know if it happened to anyone but me, but when you were saying about change your perception, my internet cut out, and then I just had this little like sound bite of you going, "Change your perception." It really made me laugh.
Yeah, I think that was just you, Alex.
Sounds like Palpatine.
You can leave now.
Trying to change his perception for ages and it doesn't happen.
Say again, Dan.
Can we announce the film for next week, and then I'll go?
Oh yeah. The next film is The Martian.
Ah.
By popular request.
The Mars bar.
The Mars bar.
The next film is The Martian.
Ah.
I'm glad I didn't do a drum roll, otherwise that would have been really fucking embarrassing.
I mean, I've just got no idea what it is. So.
The Martian. It's a Matt Damon film.
Oh, okay, then I do know what it is.
It's another
Right.
Finding Matt Damon.
I'm gonna go.
See you later.
Bye.
I see you. Bye.
Bye, Carl.
See you later.
Bye, Cole.
Oh, is that
Yeah, like when you said it, the first thing I thought of was Matt Damon, but I was like, no, I don't think that's what it was called. But apparently it was.
Damon. That's the third choice.
Damon.
Damon.
I've never seen it. I've heard it was good.
Oh, you'll be seeing it this week.
Oh, well, I feel like you just picked it because he looks like you.
Oh, that's okay. I look like Matt Damon, but I won't look like Mark Wahlberg.
Or Jesse Plemons.
You do, though.
Jesse Plemons is much more.
Yeah,
Matt
like,
Damon.
you're closer to Jesse than you are to Matt Damon. And you're closer to puppet Matt Damon than real Matt Damon.
Ah, that's just rude.
It's especially rude when you realise that they never intended to make him Matt Damon, but he came out of the oven looking a bit funny, so they went with it. That's a genuine fact. That's what happened.
Yeah. I think you told me that, John, before I had first watched it way back then. And it's like it's a funny thing. It's not good. But it's funny.
No, it's not. It's not, and I imagine it holds up very badly.
I like the idea that just because of an oven fuck up, you can't Matt Damon doesn't get any fucking credibility anymore. Just people just go Matt Damon.
Yeah. That's what I found so fucking hilarious about it. Because it's literally just because of how it's set that they went, oh yeah, Matt Damon can be a mongoloid. That's fine. In fact, what you just did is probably exactly what happened. They probably got him out and went, that's Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
That'll be amusing.
But yeah, Alec, you missed. I did another D's nuts joke, and I got pay out this time.
Nice.
And then I dabbed on him.
Very, very nice.
The dabbing is the worst part of it.
But yeah, just so you know what it was, Alec, because I heard it the other day, and I was like, "Oh, this will be perfect for Pat," because Pat's normally way too careful. I asked. No, genuinely, it's hard to catch Pat out with stuff like that. He's too paranoid about it. But I asked him to remind me what the name of the fast food place in America is with the girl with the red hair, and he said
Wendy's.
And then I said, Wendy's nuts go in your mouth.
Shit. Nah, that's fair enough. That's pretty good.
And you finally got it in the recording. Well done.
A reenactment, but it's in there nonetheless.
It's funny because I actually had a perfect one lined up for Rob this week, and then I heard that one. I was like, no, I can't let this chance go.
The trouble with doing it to Rob is he can just cut it out, so you have no evidence.
I never have.
Yeah, Rob absolutely wouldn't do that, mostly because he's lazy, and I feel like having to get rid of the thing that I almost said out loud, which would have caused Rob a problem, but I'm not going to say it. Having to get rid of all those things, I imagine he never wants to edit again.
Yeah, not really. That's a long process.
Should we go back to the?
Yeah, we probably should. Yeah, we probably should.
Another bit about the end. Sorry, Alec. All right, then I'll go. Another.
We're waiting.
Another bit about the end that I really liked. So you've got the upside down American flag, and then complete silence, and then in the song that plays over the end credits is an unreleased Prince song.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought that was really nice because it came out after he died, and Spike Lee was a good friend of his and stuff. So I think it's kind of nice that Prince's last release song is the end credits of this.
Yeah, I think that's really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And cut.
I suppose you can go then, Alec.
Cool.
But yeah, Emmanuel.
No,
I'm kidding. Go on. I do need to speak to Emmanuel before we finish, but go ahead, Alec.
that's okay. You go ahead.
No, I'm good. No, honestly.
I had one little thing. I had one little gripe with it that stopped it being a full 10 for story. Because I think it does add things to the actual. It kind of dramatizes some things, but I think it overall benefits it because, for instance, Patrice he wasn't actually dating the head of the like Black Student Society. That's just something they kind of made for the film. And then like the bomb was actually not under her car. It was like a gay bar kind of thing. But I can see why you add that character, because it just sort of like condenses everything. Bye, John.
I'm still here.
Oh shit, yeah. I thought you were just like, go ahead, Alec. Anyway.
Yeah, I wasn't just like, oh, fuck,
I'm not actually interested in what the fuck you're saying. But it's like that's something that I think actually like serves the film very well, because it allows you to kind of have the dialogue between them and all that. But there's one thing that I did think, because Flip actually didn't get outed at the Klan meeting. So that's also something that's invented for the film, and it's so he can go and save Ron from being arrested later. So that's why I was like, that's like it's okay that it's not true, but it's also something that is a convenience for something else. So that was my one like.
Well, like the first thing I kind of get, but the second thing, like. He was only outed to those specific people, so I feel like it's not like a huge plot point.
Yeah, it's not like a huge one, but like I think it is like still there, and like I don't know, like it's something about the Klan meeting where like Ron shows up and he's right next to the psycho guy who's already seen his face at his apartment.
Yeah, I didn't like that part.
And he's just looking at him going like, you fuck it. And it's just kind of like, I feel like you should recognize him. I know there's probably like kind of like a racist element like that you're trying to do where like he can't even like see him, but like he's really distinctive looking, I feel like.
Well, also he recognized Patrice.
Yeah. So
I knew he was. I'll agree. I do think that part was a bit because of how paranoid and while he acts like an idiot, he's not unintelligent, Felix. I feel like the way they set those parts of it was a bit strange. Like, it doesn't bother me that much, but I do agree with you that it's a bit odd.
Yeah, it's like you could just have him be somewhere else. You don't actually have to have him even be near him. So I don't know why they decided he needs to be looking at him like right in the fucking face. But yeah, it's just a little thing. Sorry, Rob.
To be fair, like just on him looking distinctive in the 70s, he would have looked a lot less distinctive.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I guess the other thing is that, like, even though I'm saying he recognized Patrice, but I guess again, like, he'd probably be more likely to recognize a woman than he would a man.
Possibly. Yeah, it's not a. Sorry, man.
No, I was just thinking about maybe the glasses. I don't know. That seems a bit.
Yeah. No, I mean, it could be that. It works for Clark Kent.
I was thinking that, but like black shades, it might help.
Yeah.
So many people have the same hairstyle and similar looks, and like you said about more likely to not recognize a woman for different reasons. And also someone that was specifically a pain in their neck.
Yeah,
so.
I do agree that it's kind of a bit strange because like the reason he saw him is because he went to what he thought was Ron's house. So like he would have absolutely been like, well, at least I would have thought he'd have remembered that face because it was quite a distinctive moment.
Yeah. That's my only kind of gripe on a story level, because my main gripe is like a casting kind of level.
Okay.
Because I think it's like kind of odd that the whole film sort of centers around someone talking over the phone and having another guy pretend to be him, but like Adam Driver and Ron's actor, I don't know his name. Washington. It's Denzel's son, isn't it?
Yeah, John David
Washington. Oh, John David. That's it.
Yeah, they just their voices don't sound that similar, and I feel like I feel like you should have kind of swapped one of them, just for someone who makes it sound.
I feel like even now, like over the phone, sometimes it's hard to recognize people's voices. Like a lot of YouTubers I watch, like I think that their voices are very distinct from each other, but they constantly are saying that people say they can't tell them apart, and that's now with the technology we have now. If you imagine what the phones were like back then.
I think it's just like where he, like, I don't think he, like, it's obviously not the thing that Duke says, where like, oh yeah, I can tell you're a black guy because of how you say "r," but like, just it's just like a certain quality. Like, I don't know what it is, but like, just compared to Adam Driver just being like, and it's like,
I do think that they could have, like, because they made a point of him like practicing to speak like him, and then he doesn't ever actually try and speak like him. I will say that is weird, because while I don't think it was kind of necessary to put in, they did, so they probably should have actually put the effort in to make him act different, like because it's like it's not just about like how your voice sounds, it's like the cadence and the way that you like present yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah, it would have been better if one of them started talking more like the other.
Yeah,
make it a bit more, because
like,
it
I
did
didn't
point it out throughout the film.
Yeah, like the only real reference we got to it was when he meets Duke and he's like, "Oh, have we met before?" And he's like, "No." And but it's like, and the only other reference to it really is when he's speaking to Walter on the phone and he's like, "Oh, you sound different." He's like, "Oh yeah, allergies." And it's like, that was fine, but they could have done more with that. I don't dislike that they didn't, because I feel like the focus is where it should be, but just as a movie they could have done more.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, like it is an oversight, but if you were going to have an oversight on anything, then I'm all right with it being that.
yeah, exactly. That's basically how I feel about it. Like it definitely is something they could have done better, but it's fine.
Yeah.
But I want to ask Emmanuel, what didn't you feel was impactful about the movie? What was it about this that made you score it like that?
Yeah, you crazy person.
He's the only black person here. His opinion's important. I don't know why I said that like I was drunk.
So in terms of impact, so thinking more like I was saying at the start of the call, personally, rather than how it might have impacted more people, since I haven't actually seen it. And I might raise the impact, I think I might raise the impact more after just this call. But for me, it's kind of like that thing of, because Camilla was saying the same thing, kind of preaching to the choir. Like, for me, I know this stuff still happens.
That's true, yeah.
I've grown up with my parents and family telling me stuff all the time, hearing people or cousins go through different things in America, hearing my grandma to this day still talking about the violence and stuff that, and gunshots and all sorts of stuff that happens in her neighborhoods. And I'm worried about their safety. The very fact that I worry about going back and haven't gone back because I don't want to be that random guy who's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I get shot because someone was having a bad day.
I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. Like, yeah, because I guess this movie is more for the white person to realize what's going on. Like, I hadn't really thought about it from the perspective of someone who's had to deal with it or knows people who have to deal with it. But that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, and while I'm glad he's made it, and I'm always happy for all these type of films that are either commentaries or documentaries on it, and like I'm happy for all of them. But it is, and this is what my enjoyment was though as well, because I always find it hard to watch, and I think it's because
it's much more personal to you, isn't it?
Yeah, and growing up, I know the brutal truth. I know all the stuff that was happening, and it was very real, and it was very much the kind of like what Ron was doing. I saw people doing that all the time. Was considering myself was just like what? How do you have to act? How do you have to be what do you have to take? Like my granddad on my mom's side was in the Martin Luther King marches and whatnot. I was in Alabama, so Selma was not too far from where I was born in essence. I was in the South, so you still had a lot of
Yeah,
KKK
South not a good
people
place.
and rednecks, as
Mm.
they say, not too far from like my part of Birmingham. Like it was, you didn't go to certain places because you would just be at risk.
Mm.
You still had, like, my mom would tell me a story where they were, it was, they were going around different neighborhoods, like some of the kind of nicer KK clans. I think it was part of like when Duke was president, like trying to recruit more people, trying to be more friendly, have a different image on it. And I remember she was talking about how I think one of the colleagues or whatnot was like how they really didn't want to get involved, and they had like these really thick books and whatnot. And she was talking about how she would just she some of the gas stations they had kind of burning pits at that time where you could throw stuff into a kind of closed burning pit to get rid of some stuff. And like she was trying to burn the books and whatnot. And she was just like, it was such a surreal type of feeling that before it was very separate, but now they were trying to get get into the minds of people and try and convince people that it's kind of like the normalization and the kind of charismatic kind of way of it.
Mm.
So it's yeah, it's a lot of that kind of stuff and other things. But while I'm very glad it exists, it it can be hard to watch. So just like,
Yeah, like again, that's something I hadn't really thought about. It's I like Rob. I don't know if you've spoken to Rachel about this, so I don't know if it's similar, but it's I know Rob knows about it, but are any of you familiar with the Noughts and Crosses books?
No.
By Mallory Blackman. Yeah.
From what you said.
Some of my favorite books. Like I read them when I was younger. I think the final one came out, or at least I read it when I was about 15 or something like that. I found them really fascinating and like really interesting because, long story short, the premise is the opposite of the real world, where white people are the marginalized group, and it follows. The first book starts with it's a completely black school, and you've got the first white kid who's attending the school, and it like follows that story. And I found that really interesting, and like I'd always wanted to talk to people about it. And I found out from Rob that Rachel was actually teaching it in her class, and we never actually ended up speaking about it. But like I hadn't really thought about the idea of how that might affect you as a person who's had to grow up dealing with that stuff. Like how it actually might be quite hard to sort of talk about it or even think about it. Like it's again, this is the kind of I don't want to call it ignorance because I don't think this quite classes as that, but it's there's so much that you don't think about if you're not the person, like if you're not a minority in any way or you're not someone who's had to deal with this stuff. And yeah, I'd never even like considered the idea that informative media could be like I'm sure the majority of people who are these minorities wouldn't berate the media for how it makes them feel because it is important to be informative, but I'd never considered the effect it would have on those people, like until Emmanuel said it just then. Like that's actually that's really interesting. Like yeah, I'm sort of trying to internalize that at the moment because that's such a different experience.
yeah, it's one of the things. It like you said, it's very good that it happens, that it's out there. It serves it's a reminder as well as informative. It's one of those things. And one something someone had said during the call had reminded me of something, but it also made me think of Falcon and Winter Soldier, but on a much smaller level. So at work, in my office, I'm kind of, I say, leading the racial equality action plan rollout.
Okay.
So the big senior managers, picked me because I was the most active um, member in the BAME community who's actually involved in the diversity and inclusion team. And it was one conversation with someone who he's like, I respect you for doing all this stuff and blah blah blah. But what's the point? What's going to change? Like, you're saying all this, but we're still having these problems, and these people just need to basically like disappear off the face of the earth. And I was just like, I was in that situation. I'm like, I get what you're saying, but you also need people who continue trying to spread awareness, talking about this. And
Yeah,
it can be
absolutely.
hard sometimes, but if you don't have people on both sides, like in that movie, you don't really get to change, because even some people who might be really nice and might want change, if they're not in the ethnic minority, if you don't tell them what's happening, just like Dan was saying, if you have cancel culture and people don't know, then they don't know. And how can they act on something they don't know?
Yeah, I guess it's like it's not a direct comparison, because I know that the racism stuff is a much bigger deal, but I guess it's kind of like people, including me in the past, who are kind of like, well, I'm not going to vote because it's not going to make a difference. And it's like, well, no, it's more important that more people are informed about why they need to vote, and that they do, than that they just sort of toe the line and get on with things. And like you say, like, it's important to be informative, but also to remind people, because I do think a lot of people only think about like all the racist stuff going on when there's big news stories about it, like with the riots and stuff like that, and then after that they forget about it, and to them it doesn't exist anymore. So like, it fucking really is important to remind people of this shit, but
Yeah.
again, it can be hurtful to the people who are involved in it.
I think what it kind of reminds me of is like basically like Rachel's dad's stance on all of this kind of thing is basically like, why should it be his job to sort of change people? So like, if you're kind of like, if you're racist and you're like, you're the kind of person who's gonna be going around and sort of joining these kinds of organizations, like, why is it his job? Like, why does he have to be the one to show you that it's wrong, kind of thing? And I think that's something that Spike Lee has actually been really good at, like throughout his career, is he always kind of carries that message of like, although the biggest sort of, the biggest struggle in all of this is with black people, like the rise of the far right is bad for everyone, like this is everyone's problem, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's, it's kind of, it's putting that emphasis on like, this isn't up to one section of society, like this is
we need
for
to
us
work together.
Yeah, this is for us all to fight against, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, because I absolutely agree with Rachel's dad there, because it's the same kind of thing as like women are taught that they need to be careful, and that they need to be mindful and aware of predators and stuff like that. But then it's like, no, the men should be taught to not fucking be rapists. Like obviously there's a lot of intricacies there, but like the key point is that it's always the minorities who are basically led to feel like they have to make the difference, when nothing changes like that. Everyone has to work together.
I raised my school on impact, but just because it's called.
Yeah, it's just like, really nice. Again, these kind of things are hard for me to talk about, because I find it hard to articulate my exact thoughts on it, because I do have a lot of fucking strong opinions on this, and I'm sure I've rambled a lot here, so apologies for that. But
I was going to say, I'm going to find it that hard to talk about it.
Well, no, but like, I find it hard to condense what I mean, because like, again, with that thing with women, like being brought up to be careful and like be concerned at all times and stuff, and nobody who is a victim or a potential victim should be the one who's having to do the work. Like, yes, you should be careful. And all my life, I've always, like, if ever I've gone out with female friends, I will literally walk each and every one of them home before I go home myself, because I'm a paranoid motherfucker. And even when I thought about the idea, because like, I never really wanted kids, but when I've thought about the idea of having kids, I've had the thought of, I hope I don't have a girl, because I'll be terrified. Like, and that's not how people should live. And that's like, again, black people in this country, like in a fucking civilized country, are still terrified for their lives. Like, how the fuck does that happen? It just it baffles. Like I know how it happens, I know why it happens, but it's just so infuriating and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, just like
No, don't feel sorry.
Huh?
no, carry on, Alex. Sorry, I just like I felt like I shut everything down being too heavy there.
No, I was trying to do it a bit faster so it'd be funnier. But no, it's just,
Wait.
I was just going to bring up like there was a bit of shit dubbing, so I gave 9 a production. But it didn't quite condense fast enough.
Wait, what was the shit dubbing?
There's a bit where they're in the bar playing snooker, and like Fatty is in kind of like the bottom left, and like his mouth doesn't match what's actually like being said. So like it was just a little bit of shit dubbing, and I was like, "Fuck you."
Oh, if I'd noticed that, I probably would have just thought that was him acting drunk.
Yeah,
It just adds to his character.
That character's such a weird. Like that point where Felix is like to Ron, "You stay right here," and then they walk off, and then the fat dude turns around and just goes, and then turns back around, and I'm like, "What the fuck just happened? Was that supposed to be an intimidation thing?" Like,
so I thought like the acting from all of them was pretty great because like Felix's wife is fucking dreadful.
Yeah, she is the worst part about this movie, which means that she's a fantastic actress or a very annoying person.
She was kind of reminding me of Vicky Guerrero because I was kind of going like, I can't
That's
wait.
exactly what I had.
I was like, I can't wait for this person to be off the screen, but that's what she's meant to be doing.
If you were Pat, you'd have marked this down for that.
Yeah.
I'm making a joke about you hating this, Pat.
I don't even hate. I gave it a good score.
Yeah.
Notice we didn't mention the bits.
What was I going to say? I was going to say, something else that's quite nice about this, right? So this was John David Washington's first lead role, and Spike Lee also gave him his first credit in a movie when he was 6 years old.
Oh wow! What movie was that?
Oh,
so
cool.
he played.
I'm just picturing him with the same face, but he's just got a tiny body.
Yeah, no, he played a school kid in the Malcolm X biopic, which is also nice because his dad played Malcolm X.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Didn't realize that.
Someone else needs to. Oh, perfect. Go on, Rob.
I was going to say, I do really appreciate John David Washington as an actor, especially in this film. For just like the first scene where he's in the precinct and he's like in the records room, and the guy's giving him the abuse and just he doesn't say the N-word per se, but he calls him a toad or something.
Yeah.
And he just like gives him the dead eye and just slowly, in very like a calm but very frustrated manner, just goes to get the record, really frustrated, and just like hands it to him, and is like, "Yeah, I'll do the job, but I'm not gonna like it." And I thought that was really impressive.
I love that little bit where he calls him Officer Toad, and he walks off, and then he's just going. He's actually like so good, just kind of like it's so visibly pissing him off, but he's it kind of feeds into how much joy he gets from the phone calls.
Yeah.
But that's another thing I really loved about his character, because despite everything, him being such a professional in every way, he still slips up and makes a mistake and says his name on the call and says, "Oh, it's right." And he's like,
I just hear you say your real name, and he's just like, "Motherfucker."
That was something that I really liked about the character, was that little tick where he kept doing like the little like martial arts moves.
Yeah,
because that was such a nice little nod to like that time period, because in the 70s you had like kung fu on TV and like that, it was like a really big medium. So yeah, I thought that was a really nice little nod towards that being a big thing back then.
Yeah.
I also
and now we'll watch
I agree.
and what was it, and not Enter the Dragon, what's the other one called, Rob?
Crouching Tiger.
Talking about
Game of Death.
no, the one with Bruce Leroy.
Oh shit, what's it called? The Final Dragon or something like that?
I can't remember now, but yeah, now we'll have to watch that.
The 10th dragon.
Hang on, I'm gonna look it up because it's gonna bug me.
That's literally what I'm doing.
I did like as well when they were talking about the films. I didn't know how many of them were blaxploitation films, but like
Yeah, they pretty much all were.
I really like kind of all the posters kind of just sort of sliding in during the
Laugh
conversation.
Dragon.
So that was something that I thought was kind of interesting actually, because of the whole thing that's going on with Spike. Well, I say going on. I don't know if they've rekindled it in the last couple of years, but like the whole argument between Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino, where because the whole thing, like, I think we spoke about it before, but the whole thing with Spike Lee was like, the way that you use the N word, like there's got to be something more to this, like there's something going on with you, kind of thing. And then Quentin Tarantino was like, no, I grew up with blaxploitation films, like it's nothing. And so I really like that he showed the
Some of my best
blaxploitation.
friends are black.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Like I really like that he showed the blaxploitation posters in the film, and you had Ron going like, oh, that's not real life, that's not reality, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like obviously I just find it funny when people talk about Tarantino movies, because the two things you hear are, because I heard a conversation once which was like, oh yeah, you know, like how Quentin Tarantino clearly has a foot fetish, and the other guy was like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, like have you never noticed like how he just has like really weird shots of like women's feet, and then there's a pause and the guy goes, oh shit, yeah, I can suddenly picture like a ton of them. And then the other thing is his ridiculous use of the N word, and like obviously he's very much for like gratuitous violence and gore, and that's kind of like his style. But while you could argue that the gore and stuff isn't quote unquote necessary, I think it does actually lend to the type of film he's making. But then he tries to do that with language, and it doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it's like what we were saying earlier. Like the whole point of it in this is like it's impactful because there's a purpose behind it. Whereas in sort of films like Pulp Fiction, it's kind of like you feel like there should be an impact, but it's just kind of brushed off and nobody thinks about it again.
See, that's the thing. I think it works in BlacKkKlansman in a similar way to it working in Django. Like it's there for like the setting. It's there. It's like part of the atmosphere. It's part of how people talk. But yeah, Pulp Fiction is completely just out of nowhere, like contextless.
I was saying.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, man. I was saying before you got here, Alec, that I think that the difference between this and something like Pulp Fiction and Shaun of the Dead is that Pulp Fiction and Shaun of the Dead, because it's sort of like dropped in, nobody really acknowledges it, and it's just sort of like played off for a joke kind of thing. It normalizes it. Whereas in this, like it's very clear that the people who are using it are the bad people, and yeah.
I think a good way to look at it is basically comparing it, like having a look at comedy, and you've got someone like Chris Rock, and you listen to his comedy, and like, well, obviously it's still funny. There's a lot of political stuff in there, and it makes sense. And then you look at someone like Frankie Boyle, and there isn't a joke there. It's just for impact. And once you get past that, you're like, oh, I mean, what was the point? Like, and that's basically Quentin Tarantino is Frankie Boyle, like the Frankie Boyle of directors, and I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, because like with BlacKkKlansman, like every time that you're sort of uncomfortable and you're going like, oh, like it's because there's like a greater purpose. Whereas in Pulp Fiction, it
makes you uncomfortable because you're like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, more often than not, it's just because that's the film.
Talking about Chris Rock just reminded me of a bit from The Office, where like they're having like a racial sensitivity course, and like they're going like, so let's talk about why we're here today, and then they're talking about like this comedy routine that was done, and it's basically Michael Scott was doing a Chris Rock routine, but he wasn't censoring himself for any of it.
Oh man!
The guy's going like, no. He's just like, yeah. Sorry, it's made me laugh.
Yeah, but again, like that's it's like the I feel like me and Rob might have talked about this like years ago when we were younger, but it's kind of like white people liking black music and then using the N-word because they're like singing the song, and like whether that's okay or not. And there was always a big discussion about like whether that is okay or not. And like it just, again, even if the message within the song is good, it does kind of normalize it a bit. So it's still a problem.
It's a weird one.
With that though, there's also the sort of context of the word being reclaimed from something that was nasty to something that's not anymore. So it's kind of
I guess it's you got to weigh up the what's more important. I guess like whether claiming it back is the more important thing, or if normalizing the use of it as a byproduct of that is worse.
Yeah, personally, like both me and Camilla feel the same way about this, but I don't see the point of claiming something we never made in the first place.
Yeah.
They say claiming back, but that was something that was put on you by your oppressors, the ones who slaved you and did all sorts of effed up stuff to you. Why would you want to claim?
Well, I guess
it's one way to do it as a parody, or kind of make fun of it. But I find it weird to kind of.
I think it's more of an empowerment thing. Like, obviously, I'm speaking as a fucking white man here, so take whatever I say with a pinch of salt. But I feel like although it's often referred to as claiming it back, I feel like it's more of an empowerment thing of like, we're going to take this word that meant that we were slaves, that we were lesser people, that we weren't really even people, and we're going to make it ours. Like, this is us going above that. I do, again, my opinion on this doesn't really matter, but I personally do agree with you that I feel like it's better just to move past the word rather than try and claim it. But it's kind of like, I can't remember which comedian it was, but he was saying that like there's black people and then there's the N word.
That's Chris Rock.
Yeah,
That's
thought
actually also the bit they do in The Office.
And he's just he's saying like I'm not an N word. I'm just a black person. Like you don't want to be the N word, and they're not talking about in the slave variety. They're talking about just the people who are like claiming it back, but it was giving them a bad name again. So it's like it's really hard because I get it from both sides. I get the people who want it as an empowering thing, but I also get that there are other people who are like, no, you're making this worse again.
Yeah, it's so true, and I forgot about that side of it, but it is it's doing it for empowerment reasons, but it's just like, dude, please no. Like, it would be better to go, I'm black and I'm proud, and then say reference to those times when people were called that, and say how you've risen above that X, Y, and Z. But I don't know. I just find it weird. Especially, I just find it weird.
It's something that's changed over time, though, isn't it? Because like when we were younger, it was like very normal for like literally every rapper to use it.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, you've got people like Akala and Kendrick Lamar are probably like the big two. Like they're two people who have used it in the past, but they've since come out and said like, no, we should retire this for good. So it's I think it's a bit of a reflection of the time, like when you sort of listen to older rap, because it was just the thing that every rapper did, and now the attitude towards that is changing. Where like I say, people like that are coming out and saying like, no, this isn't it anymore.
Yeah,
but it was a big part of gang culture, especially in America. So it wouldn't be surprising that so many rappers were doing it, because it was just a reflection of what was, like you said, at the times, what was going on. But now things are changing. So like,
plus, I guess it was a unique thing for them, like so they could distinguish themselves as well.
I think it also as well, like it's also something that's changed as rap as like an art form has changed as well. Because if you think about like sort of back in kind of like the 90s, it would have been sort of like a very working class thing, whereas now it's more of a sort of it's almost like an academic art form now. So it's it's two completely different stances on it.
It's funny because like I don't like the word at all. Like I said, I sort of agree with Emmanuel that I feel like it should just be a word we move past. Apart from for things like this, where it's important for the context and like the message of it. But at the same time, I'm like, there's a group of people I watch on YouTube, and one of them is black, and he uses the N word just casually in conversation. Like, he doesn't use it a lot, but sometimes he'll just say it. But it never sounds bad to me. Like it doesn't make me feel like it's okay for me to say it, but like I'm totally fine with it, like hearing it from him, because you can tell there's no meaning behind it. It's just a casual thing like that he'd probably say with his friends. Same as like we say shit to each other that we wouldn't say to other people because it would actually be a problem. So it's like I've got no problem with the word being used like casually between friends who are black. But yeah, I feel like in a professional manner, again, apart from for things like this, it should probably just be retired at this point.
I think it's I've completely forgot what I was going to say. Shit.
Well, I hope it wasn't the N word, Rob.
Oh shit, what was it?
We were talking about rap and the changes in the times.
Yeah, that was it. So another example of that would be like if I listen to sort of, probably a good example is somebody like Eazy-E. Like I really like his music, but if I listen to some of his lyrics, like the way that he talks about women, I'm kind of going like, oh, hang on a minute, mate. There's also that consideration that like, okay, he's somebody who was making music in the late 80s. Like the general attitude towards a lot of things has changed greatly, as well as kind of like the background that he's from and sort of the community that he was part of was like very working class. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's something that you can't really sort of like put your own kind of I guess like your own sort of like ideals on it now, because it was such a different time and such a different sort of background to what you are.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I think also it's important to note that like, while it's not a good thing and it shouldn't have happened, it's definitely a like coping mechanism of, obviously you're saying rap was more for the working class then. Obviously they have to deal with so much shit anyway. I say they, like I'm not part of it now. But they have to deal with so much shit, and they don't, like, we've got a lot more outlets these days than they did then. And so I feel like a lot of the time, and this is me just assuming, I don't know if this is factually accurate, but they would focus on another group of people to like bring down to make themselves feel better, either parody or genuine. Like, so I do feel like a lot of minorities, like minority men, would focus on sort of discriminating against women because it was the easier thing to do. So like, again, it's a thing of the times, I guess. And what the fuck are you laughing at, Alec?
You know how Emmanuel's camera sort of like fuzzes out like anything that's not him?
Yeah.
When he was drinking something, I thought it was like a censored, like it was all pixelated and it was something like.
Yeah, this was if we show logos, then we can't get monetized on this video. Or it was a dildo, either way.
All right.
Oh, man, you still remember that time?
A nice
what?
tasty
What?
dildo.
I told that story to Camilla.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Remember a present I got for someone that I got delivered to your house?
I genuinely don't.
This sounds
You're gonna make me tell this. Okay.
I promised you, hand on my heart, I honestly don't remember. I'm not just trying to get you to say it. Like, I can infer what you're gonna say, but I don't remember it.
So just so actually, should we cut the recording?
And any last words before I press the button?
It was a good ride.
It's just been great.